Dunque, il seminario, l'incontro che è stato organizzato oggi per voi dall'associazione di cui diverrete ex officio membri fra qualche mese, cioè l'associazione degli ex alunni della scuola Mattei, al quale gruppo mi pregio di appartenere. Dicevo, il seminario che è stato organizzato è un seminario che viene proposto dal professor Markandya. Anil Markandya ha un curriculum molto importante che vi evito per diciamo così, ragioni di brevità. Ha pubblicato insomma, tantissimo su molti temi, però insomma, direi che avete studiato anche su alcune sue cose. Personalmente lo conosco dal 1991, credo, ed è sempre insomma, un piacere incontrarlo e starlo ad ascoltare. Incidentalmente insomma, è un buon amico dell'Italia, gli piace molto l'Italia, viene spesso in Italia, finge di non conoscere l'italiano, ma in realtà potrebbe fare la presentazione in italiano, ma per ovvie ragioni è più diciamo, in comando con la lingua inglese, e quindi la presentazione ovviamente sarà in inglese. Avremmo potuto, tra le cose che avremmo potuto fare, che Anil avrebbe potuto discutere con noi, abbiamo scelto questa, che è un tema che in realtà è stato scelto prima diciamo, di ciò che è accaduto in Italia nelle settimane passate, ma certamente è un tema ricco di implicazioni che riguardano diciamo, tutti i paesi del mondo. Discutevo insomma, con alcuni vostri colleghi, la foto di destra, scusate, non è un fotomontaggio, cioè quello è il vero tsunami, quello del dicembre del 2006, credo. Quindi diciamo, vi lascio immaginare nell'ottica diciamo, del titolo della presentazione quale può essere l'impatto su capitale naturale, su infrastrutture, sulle persone, eccetera, di un evento catastrofico di quella natura. Do immediatamente la parola al professor Markandya. La presentazione dura circa un'oretta e poi ci sarà spazio per le vostre domande che spero siano ricche. Grazie.
Grazie Alessandro. Ora è meglio, forse faccio la presentazione in inglese, come hai detto tu. Il titolo è Natural Disasters, What is their impact? I'm aware it is Friday afternoon and you're all rather tired, so I try to keep it a little bit interesting, and I'm glad you chose this because the other topics I gave were all much more theoretical and much more difficult for you to absorb at this time of the day. This work is part of a rather large project in which I've been involved with the World Bank and the United Nations, who have been particularly interested to understand what are the implications of natural disasters, with which there is increasing interest because, as you will see from the data, there is evidence of an increasing frequency. And we want to understand what are the losses which people suffer, which countries suffer, and what is the best way of restituting them, what are the best responses to make in the face of them. So as Alessandro said, I just start with a couple of pictures. One from on your left is the Sichuan earthquake in China, people just getting married. And on the right, the tsunami of, I think it was 2004. And that wave is taller than the buildings that it is approaching. So there are 2006, yes. So these are two of the big ones. But here are some statistics which you may find interesting. Since 1960, disasters have killed approximately 5 million people, of course, and injured millions more. Droughts alone, the shortage of water, the siccità, has killed more than 2.5 million, earthquakes over 1 million, and storms and cyclones 750,000. And what is particularly of concern, and the reason why the United Nations, the World Bank is so interested, is the majority of deaths have occurred in developing countries. Indeed, it is well known that although the number of disasters per capita shows little correlation with per capita income, disasters happen everywhere. Disaster deaths per capita increase as per capita income decreases. So there is a correlation in that dimension. The other point which we would make is that although the absolute number of people killed in disasters is small relative, of course, to the total number of people who die, many disaster-related deaths are, it's argued, preventable. So if you compare the period 1900 to 1949 with the period 1950 to 1992, essentially the two halves of the last century, we find that the average number of people killed, for example, in an earthquake, the average per earthquake has fallen from 12,000 to 2,000 in high-income countries. So a country like Italy or the United States or France, the average number of deaths in an earthquake has declined from 12,000 to 2,000. But in the developing countries, the number of deaths per earthquake has remained constant at 12,000. So if the last earthquake, which we just saw recently in Aquila, had it happened a century ago in Italy, we might have had about 12,000 deaths. I'm not saying, I think there were actually fewer people died than 2,000. There was about, how many was there? About 300 deaths. 300. So the number of deaths has declined by a factor of 6. So that's a factor that we want to see how to achieve that. Now, what's happened here? Okay. Now, what is the kind of damage associated with this? And that's part of what I'll talk about. More than 7,000 major disasters have been recorded since 1970, and these have caused about $2 trillion of damage. And this have killed, in this period, about 2.5 million people, adversely affecting, of course, the societies in which they take place. And some 75% of the world's population lives in areas affected at least once by natural disasters since 1980 and 2000. So 3/4 of the world has been living in areas which have been affected by this. And it's also reported that the frequency and economic impacts of natural disasters has been increasing in recent years. And this is perhaps one of the most telling and worrying slides. I'm afraid it's not very good quality, but you can see here we define slides in disasters in 3 categories. We talk about geological, which are essentially associated with earthquakes. We talk about hydrometeorological, which are storms, cyclones, events related to weather and water. And we have the biological, which are the rest, essentially. And of course, while the biological have gone up a little bit, geological a little bit also. This is a slight trend here, but look at this trend here. These are the disasters, the number of identified disasters since 1900, and it's particularly this. And to some extent, people are beginning to ask, why are we getting so many more of the disasters? Because it's not the damage, it's just the number of disasters. So we are facing, if you like, almost a kind of epidemic in some categories of disasters.